Thanks for joining us on Not Boring CEs, where we don't think you should be bored to death while getting your continuing ed. Keep listening here, then hop over to notboringces.com to get all your online CE credits. All right, y'all, let's get to learning. Dr. Erica Miley, also known as Dr. E, has helped professionals with their discomfort treating patients' sexual health concerns for the last 8 years. She provides intimate training through workshops, keynote presentations, and writing. As a subject matter expert in neurodiversity and sexuality, Dr. E presents sexual information in easy-to-understand ways so healthcare providers can give access to the higher quality care their patients need. Her background in research and as a professor for institutions such as Whitworth University and Modern Sex Therapy Institutes make Erica uniquely qualified to train healthcare providers. Welcome, Erica. Welcome back to Not Boring CEs. I'm here with Erica Miley, sex therapist extraordinaire. I am excited to talk to you today about ethics surrounding sex therapy and discussing sexuality with clients and all of the things that I want therapists to know so that they can go into these conversations ethically. So thanks for being here.
I appreciate it very much. Thank you for having me. This is something that we get referrals a lot specifically because of this issue. Like I had clients come to me or therapists come to me and say, I can't help this person with this because it's about sex. And when I start to unravel it with the client, sometimes it's about sex, but because the therapist heard sex, they assumed they weren't qualified to be able to navigate it. When in reality, it was about trauma, an eating disorder, or a relationship issue that, yes, that therapist absolutely was equipped to be able to manage, but because of their own stuff around sex or their own worries about their own education around sex, which is completely valid. It's so valid. So many of us, and we've talked before about how our educations, especially in grad school, for most of us didn't cover sex. And if it did, and maybe in ethics, it was what, I don't know for you, for me, it was like 3 sentences. It was don't have sex with your clients. That's what it was.
Yeah. Yeah, that's all I got ethics wise.
And nobody prepared you for when you saw the echo of maybe your own discomfort around sex, maybe with your partner or yourself or your body, or even just the feeling of lack of education. Nobody prepared us for those parts. And I think our ethics, the ethics scenario is actually one of the best places to be able to talk about professionally together. What does it mean when you're attracted to a client? Or what does it mean when they have experienced something awful and traumatizing that you have? And how do you navigate those feelings when they come up? I'm thinking of cases that kind of roll through my head where I've had other therapists as clients who their own sexual trauma had absolutely impaired them from being able to really tackle a lot of even body image stuff. So from beginning to end, we worked on education about sex and body and healthy sexuality. And what did that mean to be able to start to come back to their own body so that they could then serve their clients better? Yeah.
Oh, okay. I'm so excited to jump into this. Can we start with talking about how like sexuality does not exist in a vacuum, that there is interplay between our personal mental health and our sexual health, and like how do we come at that responsibly as a therapist who has our own history with clients who may or may not have shared history or have experiences that may trigger some stuff within us?
Sex is not one thing first and foremost.
Right.
I think one of the first things that all of us therapists, I think, like therapy 101, I'm teaching right now, I'm actually teaching theories of counseling to bachelor's level students, and sex therapy is on the docket to talk about. And one of the first things we're going to talk about is arousal non-concordance, which is that your body can react to something while your brain is doing something else.
Mm-hmm.
So physical arousal can actually happen in your genitals, but that doesn't mean that you are experiencing desire in your mind. And I think that's so important for us as therapists to understand that your body, your genitals might actually react to something your client's saying. And if you are unaware that that's a possibility, that might pull you out of the moment completely as a therapist. It might pull you completely out of being able to sit with whatever pain your client is trying to process, but being able to also know, oh, hey, body. Oh, I see you're doing a thing. Like, there's nothing happening in this moment I'm not necessarily aroused by this. I'm not experiencing desire for my client. My body is reacting to sexual content of some sort. And I think that's often why, think about how many times, especially people who were raised in 70s, 80s, 90s, early 2000s, like, I can't tell you how many times my clients and other therapists have said, yeah, whenever my family watched something that had anything to do with sex, romance, anything, they turned it off or covered my eyes. So that discomfort just gets passed down and passed down and passed down. I did get to have in my master's degree a sexuality course, but it was entirely abstinence-based. And my master's degree.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Okay.
It was not evidence-based at all. On top of that, every person who was absolutely uncomfortable in that room led the room. They giggled at every moment. They made jokes at every moment. And me, and I think only one other therapist, this isn't a brag. This is more that, like, to just say, like, this is so common that therapists are uncomfortable. I was the one who was like, I really want to work with people who've committed sex offenses. Like, can we talk about that? I want to work with people who have eating disorders, and their bodies, their connection with their bodies and pleasure is really like, it takes a long time to get back to pleasure in your body when you've been at war with your body. I want to talk about that, and about those are the kinds of clients I'm interested in. I'm not interested in people laughing because they heard the word penis.
Right.
So those are the kinds of things that as therapists we need to learn to navigate in session so that we can do good work. Right. Especially, how many of us do trauma work? All of us.
Yeah.
So when somebody comes to us and says, like, hey, I was sexually harmed, or there was someone in my church who was inappropriate with me and crossed my boundaries sexually, or even just like making gestures that were inappropriate, and I don't know how to manage that, which is an incredibly common experience. How to use a therapist, manage that discomfort. I think one of those first ways that you start to understand your own body, your own sexual desires, and you get decent sex education, and you really start to pay attention to the things that, like, what your body is actually doing in session.
Yeah.
And get consultation.
Yeah. I feel like we touched on so many things within this already. Yeah. So we've got how our bodies respond to things our clients might be saying or doing, or how our clients show up or whatever. How the things that have happened to us and our clients, maybe maybe causing some issues. We've got just the discomfort in general around sex. Like, I think about all the people giggling in your master's program, and like, if no professor, no leader in the space was like, I get it, it's uncomfortable, let's talk about it. Like, what's making you giggle? Like, what is it about the word penis that is like making you uncomfortable right now? Tell me some about, like, what would help you feel more comfortable in this group environment talking about these things. Have you talked about this with your therapist? Like, there are so many different ways that could be approached in order to not then graduate people from master's programs who can't can't handle the word penis right now, when their client might need to use the word penis.
Exactly.
So like empathy for those folks who are giggling because there's something to be worked through, but not a lot of empathy for the instructor, honestly, who was maybe uncomfortable themselves and not addressing what needed to be addressed. So much. So can we talk about like, which of those should we start with? Because I want to dive a little deeper. I'm thinking we also talked, I think, before we hit record. Well, and you mentioned it here after record of like the only thing we're taught about sex around ethics is like, don't sleep with your clients.
Yes.
Nobody talks about what to do if you find yourself desiring your client. I think that's a very taboo thing to talk about. Can we dive into that?
Absolutely. I think probably one of the best gifts I ever got as a clinician were two supervisors in my life. When I was working in the prison setting, I worked with people who committed sex offenses, and my clinical supervisor at the time, I was already licensed, all of those things, but she was very, very clear about being able to talk about not only just arousal, but some of the things that dysregulated us in session while we were working with people who had committed crimes that most of us in graduate school will say, like, they ask us the question, who can't you work with? And every therapist that I've ever come across in the education setting is people who have harmed people sexually. Like that's the sex offender. Like they don't want to work with people who experience attraction to children. And and also we could be here all day just about that. That's such a narrow group of people. The reality was, when working in the prison setting, it wasn't the number of people who were truly attracted to children was very small. And the larger population of people I was working with had crossed sexual boundaries with a lot of different age groups, had raped people who were adults, had harmed people who were teenagers, but pubescent. So one of the gifts that supervisor gave me was the freedom to be able to talk about when it came up in my supervisory sessions. So I had a client who in this client's journal that I was having him go through, it was pretty clear that he was having fantasies about me. My supervisor helped me navigate that so that I could then talk directly to that client about that arousal he was experiencing. And because I was reading it, the arousal that I would experience, not because I was attracted to my client, but because my body was responding to reading sexual material, period.
Yeah.
And there is a difference, like we were talking about arousal, non-concordance. But the discomfort of having to face someone and say, hey, it appears that you're attracted to me. We need to talk about that, because this relationship, one, is not a relationship that is going to end in romance. So how do you manage having a conversation with someone that, one, isn't attracted to you back, but also is trying to help you navigate your desires in general? And my supervisor supported me through it. So we talked through it. We did role plays together. We did a lot of very direct work so that I could then take those clinical skills, because that's what they are, is clinical skills, and apply them to the client directly. So I want to say to all the therapists out there, us sex therapists, those of us who are certified, ASEX certified, find us. We're the ones who had to go through a lot of supervision to get to this place. If you feel like you are struggling to like identify your own concerns, it's okay to come to one of us and consult, or even go through like the skills that I just described. I have so many colleagues who are so game to talk about, what does this physically mean? What does it feel like? And how do you keep the client if that's the case, if it's a possibility. I say if, because I don't think that it is mandatory that if you are attracted to a client or a client's attracted to you and you're scared, you don't have to keep that client. That's not what I'm saying.
Right. But I think there's also, like, I think about an example from my practice where like a client disclosed that he was attracted to me. And I was in private practice. It didn't, I mean, one of my best friends is a sex therapist. I 100% could have called her and consulted. But like in that session, I was basically like, well, I guess we should refer you out then, essentially. Like, I just came from this place of discomfort myself, of not really knowing how to navigate that.
And I also think that's the instruction in grad school to many students is, if this happens, you refer. I think that's also the instruction. When in reality, like, there's something incredible that could be navigated there.
Right.
Now, if you do not feel like you have the skills or at all, it is okay to refer. I want to be clear. Like, it is absolutely okay to refer. And if it's something you want to learn to navigate, it actually can deepen your relationship with a client so that they can navigate that in the world.
Right. And often their attraction to you isn't really about you anyway.
So it Freud was right.
Only on that one thing. No.
Right. Exactly. We're not giving him too much credit. Sorry, psychoanalytic people.
We do love you. We do love you, psychoanalysts. But I think that there's like, I think about what could have been done in my work with him if I hadn't immediately internally rejected, felt very on the spot. Like, he said it without any expectation. He was not coming on to me. And he was a safe person. I didn't fear for my safety or my boundaries. But I was just like, well, it's going to be really hard to be, the grad school lines of like, it's going to be really hard for you to be vulnerable with me then, even though what he just did was incredibly vulnerable. He was proving
exactly that you can go there and be able to navigate it. And if you can navigate it, you are actually, let me be very clear with all of you therapists out there, you are actually interrupting the cycle of sexual violence when you do. When you help a client navigate their own desire, their own inappropriate boundary crossing around it, you absolutely could be interrupting the cycle of sexual violence. Because sexual violence, sexual boundary crossing, because those are, we could be here all day about how those are kind of different. Sexual violence could be like an actual crime has been committed, whereas a sexual boundary cross may be that, consent wasn't given, but it wasn't necessarily violent. Neither person knew how to communicate about it. And one or both people walked away feeling like, it didn't go, this sexual experience or this romantic connection or this desire didn't go the way that we had hoped. When you help a client through that, in the scariest moment when they actually bear it to you as a therapist, they can then do that potentially with a partner or somebody they'd like to date, or maybe even themselves and how they talk to themselves about their own desires.
Yeah. Okay. So let's talk some about like how our personal issues might impact therapeutic relationships, and like strategize some to bring some ethical next steps to it.
Absolutely. I think I'll share a tiny bit personally. In my own journey of mental health, I've dealt with my own like eating disorder treatment and my own body image issues. And so when I have looked for therapists in the past, God bless therapists that work with therapists, like just
the best.
Y'all, thank you for you. I would run into, this was several years ago, I would run into like, if this person was in the similar field as me, because oftentimes I need a therapist that can roll with the stuff I hear and think about all day. Some of my colleagues have been willing in some of their marketing to show more skin than I've ever been comfortable with, probably in my entire life. There's a long story in religious trauma history for all that. That's another day. But I noticed inside of myself, oh, I'm uncomfortable with how this therapist is marketing themselves. What's that inside of me? What's going on here? And rather than, I was definitely something that I had to bring up in session when I was first seeing this therapist. I'm like, okay, like, this is not about you. I have enough sense to know that, but I got to figure out what that is.
Yeah.
Because it's my discomfort around bodies, not what they were doing was incorrect or unethical.
Right.
And so one of the things that she had me do, and she just, wonderful, wonderful human, was start practicing the art of allowing. And I was like, girl, what are you doing to me? Like, I don't want to do that. And it was this idea that of allowing physical discomfort without then taking an action towards someone else. Then I had to sit with the discomfort and then journal about it and then talk about it in session. Like, okay, I am allowing this discomfort to exist without taking an action. And I was like, and it was incredibly powerful for me to work on that. And I think that it's when we are trying to deal with physical discomfort, I do think sitting with it is where we have to begin so that we can understand where is it coming from without, like, both you and I have been in content creation and all of those things. How many times have we heard someone say that's unethical?
Oh my gosh. And I think we should like back up to like, if you actually look at the ethics of your, like, whichever license you hold, none of it says your skirt must be 2 inches above your knee, like,
exactly.
It's our perception of what's ethical, which in this circumstance often gets filtered through our own lens of comfort with body, comfort with sex, comfort with sexuality.
Exactly. That discomfort in the body then comes out. That's unethical. When we don't, not one of us, I have yet to see one organization say this is the dress code.
Right. Yeah.
And most of the organizations, their lines are around having relationships with clients.
Right.
Not and about how you market yourself to clients.
Right. And a midriff or an ass shot in like cute pants or cute shorts or very short skirts or whatever.
Yeah.
That does not hurt clients. That might trigger clients. But our triggers are our own. That might trigger you and I because of our own stuff.
Yes.
But that's where, I mean, because therapists do this with money all the time with each other, right? Is they'll be like, oh, full fee therapists are X, Y, or Z, or therapists who take insurance are X, Y, and Z. This is unethical one way or the other,
Yes.
But like, I would say 90% of the time when therapists use the word unethical, it's not.
Absolutely. Because when you're like, okay, show me where, which organization and which ethics code are you talking about? Because I don't see it. And so it is that the first actionable step is learning to check in with your own body and your own discomfort. And in these cases, a lot of time, at least a lot of times in my field in sex therapy, it's discomfort around body. It's discomfort around romance, desire, arousal, around actions like somebody committing sexual crimes or having experienced sexual trauma themselves. Like there's such a variety of things that discomfort in the body will absolutely derail not only just the therapeutic relationship, but I mean, we see it all the time, but relationships between therapists themselves.
Yeah. And I think so many of us, despite the fact that most of us have done a good bit of work, are much more comfortable in our head than in our bodies.
Yep. all of the somatic people are probably out there cheering, like, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's the semblance of control, right? Like,
yes,
it feels safer to stay up in our heads. There are consequences to that. We all know this. We all know, like, the difficulty of being exclusively or almost exclusively in our heads.
yes.
And I mean, how many of us who aren't even somatic therapists will be like, where do you feel that in your body? You know, like that classic therapy line that everybody rolls their eyes at, but like, it's important. It's a good question. So
it is. And I think one of the next things that I think would be, and you know, I promise is not to just give sex therapists more business. We have full caseloads all the time, y'all. Like,
yeah. Y'all are doing all right.
But like, if you get the opportunity to do consult work or your own therapy work with somebody who's trained in sexuality, it really can benefit you as a clinician to be able to navigate sexual questions that come up in therapy. Because I want y'all to keep your clients. Yeah. If it is possible, I want you to keep your clients. It doesn't mean that it's always possible. Let me be clear. I just consulted with another therapist, marriage and family therapist, who got a case that it was very, very clear that it was not a case that would have been appropriate for private practice. And in fact, they had only met with this person a few times, and all of the things I was hearing, I was like, oh no, this is going to result in sexual stalking. It needs to end now. And you need to make sure that this person is surrounded by a team, because the likelihood of sexual offense is high here. And as it turned out, you know, I was correct that once this therapist ended that relationship, this person tried again and again and again to make contact and to send sexual information and to do all of those things. And so there are absolutely times when I'm going to look at somebody and go, hey, yeah, this client isn't appropriate for private practice, especially if you're working alone. This is much more appropriate for a team and for more than one person to have eyes on this person. And you aren't failing because you need to refer this person out. Right. And I was very clear with this therapist. I was like, I would not take this person in private practice because this person needs to be managed by a team. Right. Even though they have not committed a sex offense yet, they are well on their way. And you need more intervention and more eyes on this human.
Right.
So those things happen.
Yeah.
They do.
I'm thinking about like the actionable steps. So we're like noticing how we feel it in our body, potentially get consultation. If you don't get consultation, like think through, is this maybe ego or fear of hurting a client if we were to refer out, if it's necessary? Like, are we putting our own fear of hurting somebody or our own people pleasing essentially in front of like what's actually best for the client?
I think that's the best next actionable point, which is to ask yourself the question. Because I don't know, me and my colleagues that have consultation groups together, we talk about the feeling of, oh, I can do this. That feeling of like, oh, I can handle this case, or I can handle, I can handle this is a common feeling. The couple, and then maybe the individual later from the couple, or I can handle this case. There's elements of this case I understand, but there's a whole lot of it that I don't. But that question of I can handle it, and then because of ego or worry or financial worry or whatever the case may be, to question that specific question in your mind. Do you have to? No. You do not have to. The question of, oh, I can handle it, when the dynamics are going to be dynamics that might actually like rub up against your own trauma triggers, your own body image issues, whatever that case may be, if you are going to ask that question of yourself, the next question is, do you really? And if you do opt to take the client, how are you going to support yourself while you take them?
Right. Yes. Yeah, because there's a pause to ask yourself these questions, right? And if a pause is necessary because it's a challenge in some way, then you need support. Like that's a great sign that you need support if you're iffy at all.
Yes, absolutely. Because it doesn't mean that we can't, yes, there are, like the example I gave, there's cases that absolutely need to be referred out. Mm-hmm. And there are cases that absolutely, there are so many trauma-informed therapists that handed me a client that I had wished they had kept because they had such a good relationship with that client, or all of the work they had been doing before was super, super, super helpful to that person. And the consult option would have been able to, I mean, honestly, the client and the therapist probably would have been able to spend less time.
Right, right. And so like, these are people that are being handed to you or referred to you because of like sexual function issues. Is that the dividing line?
Sometimes it's that sex has come up at all. It is such a gamut of like, oh, that's your sex stuff. Like that ain't me.
Yeah.
I'm like, but it could be. I promise you can do it. You've already spent 2 years with this person. They've finally gotten to the point where they're vulnerable enough that they can talk to you about their sex life, and you kick them out the door.
Right.
You've been talking about their marriage for 2 years. How? How did we never get to sex? But no shade because of all of the reasons we've already talked about before.
Right.
I get it. The pause, the allowing, and then the pause, and then really truly ask yourself the question, do I have to either move this client on, or should I take this client? And either way, the next question needs to be, what support am I giving myself as a clinician?
This is interesting because I think about it as the opposite with eating disorders, right? Like if somebody is like, I don't know that I have, like, I don't know if I know what I'm doing. Like, this is not the area I want to be in, but I've been working with this client on trauma, and all of a sudden I'm like, refer out.
Yes.
Because there's so much shit you can step in the eating disorder world. I mean, there's shit to step in anywhere, but there's so many things you don't realize are potentially doing harm. So I love hearing this, that it's like that you already have most of the skills as a therapist to talk to your clients about sex. You just need the support around maybe some of the squeamishness you may feel about it, or discomfort you feel, and
or misinformation too. Like that's a big
point.
That is a huge issue. Like there is an entire market around the idea of sex addiction, and it is not true or part of what those of us who are actual certified sex therapists do. We treat out of control sexual behavior, which is completely that is what it is. It's not, sex addiction is not a thing. It's not in the DSM, and it's not at all how we approach like working with somebody who might have out of control sexual behavior. When in reality, most of the time when somebody comes to me and says, I'm dealing with sex addiction, and usually it's not that way, honestly. It is a partner who comes to me and says, my partner has sex addiction. It has nothing to do with even the idea of sex addiction. It has everything to do with trust within the relationship and desire within the relationship, and trust having been broken around sex, whether it's infidelity or neither person being able to talk about what actually arouses them. There's a lot of things that, yes, absolutely, a therapist who has no idea and has a lot of misinformation would absolutely step in it. And those are definitely cases where I'm like, refer. Yeah. don't make things worse. Don't do harm.
Mm-hmm.
And when somebody's doing great trauma work and they finally get to the point where they talk about their sexual trauma, can I help a therapist help their client navigate that? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So can we talk about resources? Like, you can't give all your time for consultation with all the people listening to this. How can therapists find great people to consult with, mm-hmm. or people to see themselves, to kind of address their own, well, just to get the support they need when they're going through discomfort working with clients, when they're going through maybe some of their own sexual, emotional mm-hmm. stuff themselves?
Yes, absolutely. So ASECT has a directory. All of us who are certified, not only just certified sex therapists, certified sex educators, because sex educators can do the psychoeducation part, especially if you wanted to, like, say you wanted somebody to come in and train your group practice. Sex educators can absolutely do that. Mm-hmm. And so there is a huge list of all of us humans who have been trained, supervised, and who have ethical information, mm-hmm. in addition to have been supervised for lots of hours to be able to give this information, give education, and support people through getting appropriate help around their sexual health, and especially around bodies. Mm-hmm. So I would start there.
Yeah. And ASECT, y'all, is AASECT.
Yes. Not one A, two A. Mm-hmm. And it can be like, there are lots of us all over the United States. And there are actually, I think they have a list even in Canada for those of us who serve Canada as well. Mm-hmm. So I would begin there. Mm-hmm. And as far as resources to begin with, there are some wonderful books that I think I encouraged even in the last time you and I talked. Come As You Are is from Dr. Emily Nagoski, is wonderful, especially when it talks about like AFAB people, that's assigned female at birth, people who have vulvas, and how for roughly over 70% how their desire actually works. There's another one from Ian Kerner. It's called She Comes First, and it talks a lot about how in like heterosexual relationships, how so many people have no idea what they're doing with anatomy, with oral sex, with desire. Those are really good places to begin. The Great Sex Rescue is a really, really good one as far as for especially people who've been through religious trauma, and those of us who are doing sex therapy. We're seeing a ton of that right now. We're mm-hmm. seeing a lot of people come or doing some deconstruction work out of whatever faith they're coming from and trying to understand sex now. Mm-hmm. There's a lot, and especially if you can find a sex therapist in your area, they're going to have an understanding around like some of the cultural things of your specific state. The folks that my wonderful colleagues in Utah have been helping people navigate like coming out of Mormonism, or they're staying in Mormonism, how to have good sexual relationships with partners. Mm-hmm. So definitely the listserv, check out some books and start to notice, practice that art of allowing. Where am I? How do I feel about this? What are my own boundaries around clients? And how do I explore those with a professional that understands this and will let me really explore this?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think about, like, I'm so glad there's a directory, because therapists may know sex therapists in town that they yes. already refer to and respect, but it might feel too yes. vulnerable to be like, hey, mm-hmm. like I'm having a struggle here.
Yes.
in helping this client. And when it's consultation, it doesn't have to be in your state even.
No, it doesn't. So, and that's the most wonderful thing. I do consultation with people from all over the country and Canada and in Europe. Like there's we can, because of, thank goodness for the internet in this way, right? Like we can, in consultation in particular, we can help a lot of people from all over the place. The other thing I think is one of the examples that for myself that really kind of helped me like understand the interplay between like specifically trauma and sex was I had a client who had been looking up a type of pornography of younger aged people. And it had turned out that he just couldn't get to the point where he was like, I don't understand what this is and why I want to look at this. And we started to really delve into his trauma history. It turned out he was experiencing flashbacks, and that he wasn't actually like, if he actually let himself unpack his own desires, his desires were not for teenagers. He was experiencing flashbacks from these things he'd experienced.
Right.
And was trying to, his body and mind were trying to understand actual PTSD flashbacks that his body was reacting to, that he was fundamentally distressed by.
Right.
That case taught me in just like the most, like, it packaged up for me the reason why we need to understand how our bodies work, how desire works, how arousal works. Because if you get to do good therapy, you really start to unlock like, oh, this might have zero to do with sex and desire. This has to do with how you were traumatized.
Right. Right. And I mean, I'm thinking about how that goes for therapists too, and their reactions to things clients say in session, particularly like maybe more sexually explicit things that might get divulged or expressed. Because so many of us do trauma therapy all the time, but we might not hear some of the more sexual sides or the more sexual words that then might trigger us.
Yes.
Yeah. So I think like this idea of ongoing consultation, which we always love for therapists, like all therapists, all circumstances, having just like your own little old Rolodex of like who you can get support from depending on what your clients are coming in from, like the people you really trust and respect within different niches.
Yes.
Super powerful, and also very responsible. And I would say ethically, we should probably all have that in our back pocket. Yeah. Just to make sure that when something comes up in session, we have people we can go to so that we can provide incredibly competent care.
Yeah. I think that it can also look a lot of different ways. This is a way that I haven't run into. It doesn't mean it doesn't exist. I just haven't run into many therapists talking about it. So I belong to a book club, a psych book club, where all of us professionals are from different parts of the field. So there's psychiatrists, there's psychiatric A&Ps, there's therapists, there's a few kind of interesting combos. Like there's we have a physio psychiatrist in the group, so they work a lot in like the world of TBIs. So it's such a multidisciplinary book club that we are reading books and then we're bringing cases. So we're naturally supporting one another from our expertise. Big surprise, I'm the sex person. Like right. The sex book comes in, they're like, Erica, be ready. We're bringing all the cases. But I'm not alone in that. Like the child psychiatrists, I'm like, okay, I've got this adult, but this is what they experienced in childhood. Like, I'd love to kind of hear some of your perspectives on it, because we read this attachment book, or we read this relationship book, or we read whatever the case may be. The focus is around the book, but then we bring the cases. And it is such a valuable resource to me.
Yeah.
So it's okay, I think, to try to find the different versions of this, that one-on-one consultation may not on a regular basis be necessary.
Mm-hmm.
But finding groups like this could be really, really helpful and feel less isolating, so that you can tackle, oh, there's a sex therapist in that book club. Maybe I should ask them like what they think of a book, or ask for a resource. Or there's a childhood psychiatrist in that group. So how can I like get resources from both of these people, especially if you serve kids? Because those folks out there that serve kids, you're definitely going to run into the kid who's experienced sexual assault, and you're going to have to deal with the fallout, not only for that kiddo, but for you, because of how you will feel afterwards.
Yeah. It's interesting. I'm thinking about, so like I started my career working at a sexual assault center and child advocacy center, and I did forensic interviews for kids who had experienced trauma. Yep.
I'm curious, did they talk you through, because this was something that I worked directly with my clinical supervisor on in the prison setting. Did they talk you through how to keep you safe while you were reading those cases?
I'm trying to remember. The training was really extensive in like how to not F it up, because, this is, you're interviewing a child, it's recorded, it goes to court. Like you messing it up might mean somebody goes, out in the community and nothing happens, and people are then unsafe. So it was a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
I don't think they did. Like, I still remember like this one incident where like personal life, work life came into play, where a girl described being like pushed onto a bed by her assailant. And then later that night, I came home to my live-in boyfriend, who then like playfully pushed me on the bed, wanting to instigate something. Yes. And I was like, nope. Nope.
Exactly. You are giving like the most, like, this is where it happens for all of the therapists I've ever worked with, especially who do trauma work.
Yeah.
Like, you hear sexual material in session or doing a forensic interview, and you're not necessarily like in the headspace. You're not paying attention to how that like maybe creeped in, and an echo happens in your own life, and you're there.
Yeah.
You're there.
Yeah.
So one of the like biggest skills I learned, and maybe this is one of those things that I can offer all of you, and it's something I teach therapists a lot, is when they're having to read sexual material, when they're having to do a forensic interview like that, or if they're having to do a like, even if they're just taking their first intake history and they know, okay, this person might have some sexual trauma, or even if it comes up in session and you weren't expecting it, this ACT tool, the acceptance and commitment therapy tool, cognitive diffusion is one of my favorite tools in therapy generally, but this can be really helpful in session for therapists. So if you hear something that kind of strikes you, but you're not altogether sure, and you're trying to stay in the moment, it's okay to try to use a cognitive diffusion techniques in session while it's happening to keep your mind safe. So I had this happen where I had to read a case I was in the prison setting, where all of the children the person harmed were my children's age. And like identical, like very, very close. And my supervisor warned me ahead of time, like, hey, like you need to practice some skills while you read through this, because it's going to be a lot, and it's going to be a lot to go home to look at your kid.
Yeah.
And so I practiced the river, and it's picturing a river really well in your mind, and just seeing the water go by, and taking the image and putting it on something and letting it float. Like just acknowledging the thought and letting it float on by you. And if it continues to get stuck, make what you're putting it floating on a little absurd, because absurdity can kind of help give you some space between you and the thought. So like in my mind, it's the Trinity River in Trinity County in California, because it's where I grew up. and I can see that river very clearly, and I can put those thoughts on weird floaties and they go right down the river. Sometimes the river needs to have a waterfall on the other side. And I run that through my mind again and again and again, just to let the thought not get hooked in my head. Does it mean that it's always successful? No.
Right.
But try to keep your brain safe in that moment. You can always come back to something with a client. It is okay to take a moment in your own mind to keep your own brain safe.
Absolutely. And I think about, like, I was at a place in my life where I was ashamed to go to my supervisor and say,
of course,
like, it's kind of wrecking my sex life doing this. Because that's like personal in my mind, right? Like that's not a work thing. That's a personal problem. So I didn't have anyone to talk about this stuff with. And I actually learned a technique similar from a colleague where, as I was driving home, it would float off the top of my car and go back. But I think for people who like haven't read these reports or don't know about forensic interviews, it is every detail. Like when I was doing a forensic interview, I was meant to be able to see it in my mind like a really terrible movie, like every detail, every movement, all of it. So it's so explicit. It's similar to probably what a lot of people who do prolonged imaginal exposure with survivors experience, having to like listen to every detail as people work through. And it was a similar thing where kind of a positive thing happened. I used to run, I might have said this in our last conversation, but I used to run an incest survivors group for adults.
Yes.
And I remember it just being like a really impactful group and just feeling really grateful for my own dad who edits this podcast. Hey, Dad. But feeling really grateful for my dad and calling him and being like, you know, sometimes just like really bad things happen to people. And I'm just so like grateful that you were always appropriate and safe. And he was like, are you thanking me for not molesting?
Yes. Yes, I am.
I just realized, like, I mean, it helped. Sometimes there is a flip side of hearing really hard things from clients can have you realize like, this isn't something I've experienced personally. And you can thank the person in your life who kept you safe, you know? But
then you're doing something with that rather than having it sit in your mind like poison.
Yes.
We are all very aware of the idea of vicarious trauma. That is what this is.
Yep.
And we are not talking about in our ethics courses about what that means for your own sex life.
Yes. And how our own sex life is really important to our own well-being, which impacts everything. It's kind of like how, like, it's not mind and body. It's all the same thing.
Yep. We are a bowl full of Jell-O. Dr. Dexter Amen, one of my favorite professors, early in my education, he used to say that to us all the time. And it just so, like, the longer I've been doing this work, like that, his words ring in my head. Humans are a bowl full of Jell-O. If you touch one side, the other side will always move.
I love that.
Always. And I'm like, I can just picture it in my head, a big like bowl with red Jell-O in it, and I just picture like Yeah. Which goes back to like our original point of like our personal like health and mental health and our sexual health are linked. They can't, all of it.
They can't be parsed out. It's not like a string you can pull out and put over here.
No, not at all. They're not things we can divide. They are not things that I don't know how many clients you've had that have said this, but I have definitely had my fair. I just put it in a little box in my mind and I put it away. And I'm like, every time I've heard anybody say that, I'm like, where are these boxes and how did you get them? Like, what magic do you have in your life that you have little boxes in your mind? I can tell you right now, when we look in there with a machine, there's no boxes.
Right. We call that suppression.
If you have something that you want to tell me that it's hard to open, yeah, that's fair. I hear that, but
yeah. And I think like some compartmentalization is sometimes necessary, but also we can't hold it in that compartment forever. Yeah. That has to be a very temporary thing for it to not become suppression.
Absolutely. I hope all of the therapists out there listening are hearing this from the compassionate tone that I mean it. Mm-hmm. Not any one of us wanted to not have enough sex education. Not any one of us wanted to feel these things in sessions. And so when I work with therapists, when I do consultation with therapists, I am always just in this place of like deep compassion for our field, mm-hmm. because we didn't ask for this. In fact, we would love, I remember coming out of grad school and wishing I had every tool in the toolbox so mm-hmm. I could feel more effective.
Yeah.
Sex is a place where so many of the clinicians I have worked with and taught over the years, it is the place where they feel so ineffective. Mm-hmm. And I feel for them. I feel for them. 2 seconds. I'm going to close, make sure that, oh wait, Corgi's done barking. Sorry. So the deepest compassion that I have for our field.
Mm-hmm. Right. And because it's also not just how we show up in session. It's how like all of us are in the soup together in the whole world who don't have the sex education we need. Those that do have the sex education they need, it's not like they're free from any issues around sex or sexuality or body or anything like that. But when we don't even have the information available to us, it does impact our own well-being as well as how we can show up in session when our clients are talking about this.
This is a whole nother hour. I could talk about like the idea that sex therapists have their whole sex lives figured out, or that they're all kinky humans, or that they are all like this very like out there group of people who are just ready to convince you that you want to bring BDSM into your own life. Mm-hmm. Like that, there is definitely like this perception around what sex therapists do versus what we actually do.
Right.
And like what you said about like that, those of us who are sex therapists, like we have our own sexual issues. Mm-hmm. We have our own like things that we're trying to navigate, just like any other therapist, regardless of your expertise.
Right.
We have our own stuff. It just happens that we have a lot of education, at least for me, that's where my nerd lives. It's not at all where like I won't have problems with my own partner.
Right.
So, or that like, I'm going to convince every therapist that they need to, buy a sex swing. Like that's not how it's going to go.
Not all of us are coordinated enough for that, Erica.
No, not all of us. Like some of us deal with chronic pain.
Right. Like some of us have vertigo. Like, so
right. Like maybe we need help, and we need the supports around like having chronic illnesses, having mm-hmm. dealt with eating disorders yourself, or myself, like being able to work on your own body issues. The thing I can tell you as someone who's done it and who continues to help others do it is the freedom that it does give you is the freedom to know that it's okay when you are struggling with it.
Yes. That it's not like you're cured and now you always feel like super hot. It's
you're
like
going
an
to
acceptance.
Sex parties. Like,
right.
like,
right.
That's not how it always goes. Does it mean that there are people who want to do that? Absolutely.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean that every time you walk into a sex therapist that we're going to completely upend any of your interests and we're going to make you, build the sex room like on Netflix. That's not how it's going to go. Also, fun show if you get an opportunity to watch it. It's really fun.
Yeah.
So I just appreciate our field very much, and I appreciate clinicians. The work we do is very, very difficult, and I know I'll speak for myself, but I also know a lot of my colleagues want to be supports to the therapists out there.
And I think like where this all boils down from an ethics perspective is like, pay attention to your responses and reactions to things and reach out for the help that's available in the places that we talked about, whether it's a book, whether it's consultation. Reach out for help when it feels like it would be beneficial, not when it's absolutely necessary, because then it's, I mean, it's never too late to learn, but like,
that's right.
Just like, you know, we talk about couples therapy. Like if you come in when things are like really at the end, there's only so much people can do, then you're maybe looking at discernment therapy. But if you're coming in when things are uncomfortable, but not in crisis, then you're going to benefit from it. And so will your clients.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And then this isn't a rub to the marriage and family therapists out there. One of my my sex therapy supervisor, he's a psychologist. He always would love to see marriage and family therapists come in to get sex education and or like sex therapy CEUs. He's like, because then it's like I get to see a plumber do toilets. Like when you are working within relationships and the complex dynamics within those relationships, you need to be able to talk about sex.
Yeah.
Or like a plumber do toilets.
Yeah, absolutely. Erica, thank you so much. I feel like you break all this down in such a compassionate, thoughtful way. And well, also kind of like calling things out where they need to be called out so that we can actually see them in ourselves. So thank you.
I see it in myself. I appreciate that. And I see it in myself. So I just, I just want to be a support because we're just human out here, y'all.
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. Well, thank you so much.
I hope that broadened your clinical horizons. Head over to notboringces.com to get your CE credit. Want to have a not boring conversation with me about your clinical area of expertise? You can apply there too. If you like this conversation, leave us a 5-star review, tell a friend, and be sure to subscribe for future conversations.